Hey, I just want to talk about the development process of a game I'm making in Godot. In the initial stages of game design, I thought it'd be a good idea to work with the concept of boosting. So these two pickups would actually provide either a faster boost or a longer boost, and the boost would allow you to travel different distances away from the enemy. While these are just placeholder graphics, I like to see what I'm looking at, so eventually I change these graphics over to something different. But for now I just use boxes and spheres. Originally I had the enemy able to consume or at least destroy some of the power-ups as I walk through, but later on I decided that was probably a bad idea, so they just pass right through. I started toying with the idea of having pickups that will give me more of a charge, so I can use the boosts longer, and I decided to change the boosts into two different types of mechanisms. One is a speed boost and one is a cloaking boost. Here's an example of how I do pathing with the enemy. As the enemy travels, it'll go up and down the path until it gets close enough to the player, and then it'll start chasing the player. When the player has the cloaking on, the enemy can't see them and they won't chase them, but as soon as they reveal themselves and they're within the distance, the enemy will start chasing you. Here's an example of that speed charge. We can just zip away. I implemented a way to hide from the enemy by going behind a wall. So if the enemy is chasing you and it can't see you in a line of sight, it'll just go back to its current path. Once it sees you, it'll try and chase you again. It's around this time I also implemented gamepad controls. If you look up top, you can see that I can switch between my power-ups. Right now it's in the cloaking black, but I can switch it with the mouse wheel, and I decided to keep this. I'm also taking the 3D render with a second camera and transposing the pickups onto the UI, which actually saved me a little bit of time in terms of UI design. I added some extra sounds. I was tired of hearing nothing. Some of these came from SFXer. Some of these actually came from Fruity Loops. That was actually Fruity Loops, I believe. That's the sound of running out of charge. All of these probably won't make it into the final game, but it's just nice to have something other than silence. I wanted to create a barrier with access to it, so I animated this door in Blender, and as the player walks up to it, the door will flip open. Before, there was no gravitational code. This is a kinematic player, not a rigid body, so you have to actually program in gravity and have it fall down through code. I got tired of looking at squares and balls, so I decided to make little enemies with heads and have the player with a head. Eventually I got rid of these wheels because they're silly looking. I also got the cloak effect to work on both parts of the body. I got tired of being armless, so I decided to make a projectile shooter. I ended up creating this projectile shot sound in Fruity Loops. Originally I envisioned a door that you have to bust through, but then I sort of just decided to make it a door that you have to boost through. I thought it'd be good to have the enemy explode and drop some charges, so that's what I did. With that I added more health for some enemies, and that way I can create some tiered enemies, some stronger than others. The latest design are turrets that shoot at you as soon as you enter their area. Because of that, I also created a death animation and a restart, so it relives the scene. There's a lot more to do, but I really like the direction it's going. As I build and design this game, I've been thinking of another game I actually want to build, and it's always so tempting to just jump ship and start working on the next thing. But I've realized that if I could just put out something simple, I actually have a little bit more confidence in what I want to build next. The next game I plan on designing will actually reuse a lot of these same components. Hope you enjoy this quick wrap-up. This is roughly a month of work, but that's really just spurious development and maybe just a couple hours a week. Stay tuned while I get into level design and add some additional mechanics. I'll also discuss a little bit more about the future project that I've been planning, some of its additional mechanics, and how it kind of relates to this game. Thanks again, and enjoy this little frog I made in Blender.